I never imagined a single moment could turn my world upside down. It was a sticky Tuesday in August, the kind where the Charlotte humidity clings to your skin and the cicadas sing louder than your thoughts. I was 35, perched on my porch swing with a glass of iced tea, watching the neighborhood breathe. My husband, Tom, was at the hardware store. His latest obsession was rebuilding the deck, a project that kept him busy and grinning like a kid. We'd been married 12 years, long enough to settle into a groove, steady, familiar, like a song you know by heart. I liked it that way. Or so I thought. Then I saw him. Jack Harper, the new guy across the street, was hauling boxes from a beat-up pickup. He'd moved in a week ago, early 40s, broad-shouldered, with that weathered charm of a man who'd worked hard and lived harder. Linda from next door had whispered he was a widower, fresh from Tennessee, chasing a quieter life. I gave a neighborly wave when he looked over, and he shot back a grin that hit me like a summer storm, unexpected and electric. It wasn't just his looks. Those blue eyes could have stopped a train. It was something in his stance, a quiet confidence that made me sit up straighter. "Hot one today, huh?" he called, wiping his brow. His voice carried a drawl that stirred something in me, and I chided myself for it. "I'm Susan Miller," I thought. Wife, mom to a 7-year-old, not some starry-eyed girl. "You bet," I answered, keeping my tone breezy. "Need help with those boxes?" He laughed, a low, warm sound that wrapped around me. "Nah, but I'd take some of that tea if you're offering." Next thing I knew, I was handing him a glass on that porch, standing closer than I'd meant to. Up close, he smelled like cedar and sweat, and his handshake lingered a heartbeat too long. We chatted about nothing: humidity, the street, his plans to spruce up that old craftsman house. But his gaze had a pull, a flicker of something that made me feel noticed, really noticed for the first time in years. Tom still saw me, of course, but his looks were quick, distracted, the kind you give a well-worn chair. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Tom snored beside me, clueless, while I stared at the ceiling, Jack's smile replaying like a stubborn melody. I told myself it was ridiculous, a fleeting fancy that'd fade by morning. But there he was the next day, clipping his shrubs in a t-shirt that hugged his frame. I watched from the kitchen, my coffee forgotten, until he waved, and I ducked like I'd been caught red-handed. Weeks slipped by, and Jack wove himself into my days. He dropped by with small excuses, needing a wrench, asking where to grab a decent burger. Each time, that spark flared, a secret thrill I couldn't shake. Tom didn't see it. He was too wrapped up in his deck or cheering the Panthers with his pals. I started finding reasons to linger outside, tending flowers that didn't need tending, sweeping a spotless porch. Jack always found me, and we'd talk. About his wife, Diane, gone 3 years from cancer. About my son, Ethan, who'd just started 2nd grade. About life. One night, Tom was at a late PTA meeting. Ethan's school kept him hopping, and I was alone, flipping through a parenting magazine I couldn't focus on. The doorbell chimed, and my pulse kicked up. Jack stood there, a bottle of bourbon in hand. "Nightcap?" he asked, that grin tugging at me like a dare. I should have turned him away. I should have locked the door. But I didn't. We sat on the couch, my couch, where Tom and I had built Lego castles with Ethan, and sipped bourbon that warmed me from the inside out. The room shrank with him in it, the air thick with something unspoken. He talked about Diane, how her laugh used to fill their farmhouse. I shared how Tom and I met at a college tailgate, how reliable he'd always been. "Sounds like a solid guy," Jack said, his eyes holding mine. "He is," I murmured, but my voice faltered. Then he leaned closer just enough, and I didn't move back. His hand grazed mine, igniting something I couldn't douse. I could have stopped it, stood up, laughed it off, shown him out. But I didn't. I leaned in too, and when his lips brushed mine, it wasn't loud or wild. It was a soft, shattering warmth that woke every buried part of me. For that moment, I wasn't Susan Miller, wife and mom. I was just me, alive and trembling. He pulled back, eyes searching. "I shouldn't have," he said, but he stayed close. "No," I breathed, But I didn't stop you. That was the start. Not of everything. Not yet, but of a fracture I couldn't mend. I climbed into bed later, Tom still out, and lay there, replaying it. Guilt twisted in my gut, but so did a restless hunger I hadn't known was there. I swore it wouldn't happen again. I'd keep it locked away, stay the woman I was supposed to be. But I knew I was kidding myself. Morning came, and Jack showed up with coffee, acting like it was just another day. Figured you could use this, he said, all easy charm. I took the cup, hands shaky, and forced a smile. But as he strolled back across the street, I felt it, the pull, the shift, the edge of something I couldn't escape. And I wasn't sure I wanted to. The coffee Jack brought that morning sat untouched on the counter, steam curling up like a ghost of last night's mistake. I stood there, staring out the kitchen window, watching him disappear into his garage. My chest felt tight, like I'd swallowed something I couldn't cough up. Tom shuffled in, hair still mussed from sleep, and pecked my cheek on his way to the fridge. "Deck's almost done," he said, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Might grill tonight if I finish early." I nodded, forcing a smile, but his words barely registered. All I could hear was the echo of Jack's voice. "I shouldn't have. And mine, but I didn't stop you." Ethan burst in then, a whirlwind of 7-year-old energy, demanding pancakes. I went through the motions, mixing batter, flipping them on the griddle, while my mind spun. Jack's kiss lingered like a bruise I couldn't ignore, tender and sore all at once. I told myself it was a fluke, a stumble I could step back from. I'd keep my distance, focus on Tom and Ethan, let routine stitch me back together. But even as I plated those pancakes, I knew it was a lie I couldn't sell myself. By noon, the sun was blazing, and I sent Ethan out to play in the backyard. Tom was hammering away at the deck, his radio blaring classic rock. I stepped onto the porch for air, and there was Jack, washing his truck in his driveway. Shirtless. The sight hit me like a punch, water gleaming on his skin, muscles flexing as he scrubbed. He caught me looking and waved, that grin flashing again. I waved back before I could stop myself, then turned away, heat creeping up my neck. What was I doing? This wasn't me. I didn't gawk at neighbors, or let my pulse race over a man who wasn't my husband. But it didn't stop there. That afternoon, he knocked on the door, holding a bag of tomatoes from his garden. "Thought you might like these," he said, casual as a summer breeze. I took them, our fingers brushing, and that spark flared again, sharp, undeniable. "Thanks," I mumbled, avoiding his eyes. He lingered, leaning against the frame. "You okay, Susan? You seem off." His voice was soft, probing, and it unraveled me. "I'm fine," I lied, stepping back. "Just busy." He nodded, but the way he looked at me said he wasn't buying it. That night, Tom fired up the grill, and we ate burgers on the new deck. Ethan chattered about school, and Tom beamed with pride over his handiwork. I laughed at the right moments, passed the ketchup, played the part. But every bite tasted like ash, and my eyes kept drifting across the street. Jack's lights were on, a faint glow through his curtains. Was he thinking about me too? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, half thrill, half dread. Days blurred into a strange dance. I'd see Jack outside and we'd exchange small talk, safe, neighborly stuff. But underneath it was a current, a pull I couldn't shake. One morning, he asked if I'd help him pick paint colors for his living room. "You've got a good eye," he said, and I couldn't say no. Inside his house, it was just us, surrounded by swatches and silence. He stood too close as we debated shades of blue, his arm brushing mine. My breath caught, and when he looked at me, really looked, I felt the floor tilt. "Susan," he said, low and steady, "we need to talk about the other night." I froze, clutching a swatch like a lifeline. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, too fast. "It was a mistake." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Was it? 'Cause it didn't feel like one to me." My heart hammered, and I backed toward the door. "I'm married, Jack. I've got a kid. This can't happen." He didn't follow, just watched me go, but his eyes said more than words ever could. I thought that'd be the end of it. drawing a line, slamming the door shut. But the next day, Tom was at work, Ethan at school, and I was alone, folding laundry in the quiet. The doorbell rang and my stomach dropped. Jack stood there, hands in his pockets, looking like a man on the edge. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, no preamble, no grin. I tried, but it's there every time I close my eyes. I should have shut the door, told him to leave. Instead, I let him in. We didn't touch, not then. We sat at my kitchen table, coffee between us, and talked. He told me how lonely he'd been since Diane, how he hadn't meant to feel this way. I admitted Tom and I had drifted, not fighting, just coasting, and how I'd forgotten what it was like to feel wanted. It was raw, messy, and wrong, but saying it out loud made it real. When he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. His touch was warm, steady, and it lit something in me I couldn't snuff out. That's when it shifted, not just a kiss, but a choice. We met again the next day, then the next, stealing moments when Tom was gone. A coffee here, a walk there, always careful, always quiet. Each time, the line blurred more, his hand on my back, my laugh too free. I told myself it was harmless, just a friendship with an edge. But late at night, lying next to Tom, I'd feel the weight of it pressing down, a secret growing too big to hold. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. It was a Friday, Tom at a late shift, Ethan at a sleepover. Jack came over, and we sat on the couch, closer than ever. His fingers traced mine, and I let them. "Susan," he whispered, "I'm falling for you." My breath stopped. Falling. Not just a spark, not just a thrill. Something deeper, heavier. I opened my mouth to argue, to push it away, but his lips found mine again, and I sank into it. Longer this time, hungrier, until I pulled back, gasping. "We can't," I said, but my voice was weak. "We already are," he replied, and I knew he was right. As he left, I stood in the doorway, watching his shadow fade across the street. The thrill was there, yes, but so was something new, fear. Not of getting caught, but of losing myself. Tom's truck rumbled into the drive minutes later, and I greeted him with a smile that felt like a mask. He kissed my forehead, tired but content, and I wanted to scream. What had I done? What was I still doing? The answer clawed at me, but I pushed it down, locked it away. For now. Tom's kiss on my forehead that night felt like a brand, marking me even as my mind replayed Jack's words, "I'm falling for you." I stood in the kitchen after he went to bed, the house settling into its familiar creaks, and poured myself a glass of wine I didn't want. My hands shook as I sipped, the taste sour against the memory of bourbon on Jack's lips. I'd crossed a line, not just once, but over and over, each step pulling me further from the woman I'd been. The woman Tom trusted. The woman Ethan needed. But knowing that didn't stop the ache, the pull towards something I couldn't name. Saturday dawned bright and loud, Ethan bounding in with tales of a sleepover, Tom flipping bacon in the skillet. I moved through it like a ghost, smiling, nodding, flipping channels in my head between guilt and Jack's blue eyes. "You're quiet today," Tom said, sliding a plate my way. "Everything okay?" His voice was warm, steady, the same Tom I'd loved since I was 23. "Just tired," I lied, and he squeezed my shoulder, accepting it. I hated how easy it was to deceive him. Jack stayed away that weekend, and I told myself it was for the best. Distance would cool things down, let me catch my breath. But by Monday, when Tom was back at work and Ethan at school, the silence roared. I was pruning roses in the front yard, anything to keep busy, when Jack's truck rolled up. He stepped out, hesitant, hands jammed in his pockets. "Missed you," he said, simple as that, and my resolve cracked like dry earth. "We can't keep doing this," I whispered, glancing around for prying eyes. He nodded, but his gaze held mine. "I know, but I don't know how to stop." That's when it twisted again. He didn't come closer, didn't push, just stood there, vulnerable in a way that disarmed me. "I've got tickets," he said after pause. "A concert in Raleigh this Friday. Thought maybe you could come." My stomach flipped. Raleigh, an hour away, a world apart from Charlotte's watchful streets. Jack, I started, but he cut in. No pressure. Just think about it. Then he walked away, leaving me with thorns in my hands and a choice I didn't want to make. The week crawled by, each day a tug-of-war. Tom was his usual self, planning a family movie night, fixing Ethan's bike, while Jack saw for naught at me. I'd catch glimpses of him, mowing his lawn, tinkering in his garage, and feel that pull, magnetic and maddening. By Thursday, I was a mess, snapping at Ethan over spilled juice, staring blankly at Tom's stories about work. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, Tom asleep beside me, and made a decision. I texted Jack, "I'll go." 3 words, small but seismic, and his reply came fast. "Pick you up at 6. Friday hit like a freight train. I told Tom I was meeting Linda for girls' night, another lie that slid out too easily, and he grinned, happy I was getting out. "Have fun," he said, kissing me goodbye as he left with Ethan for pizza and arcade games. I stood in front of the mirror, picking a dress I hadn't worn in years, hands trembling as I brushed my hair. When Jack pulled up, I slipped out, heart pounding, and climbed into his truck. He didn't say much, just drove, but his hand rested on the console, inches from mine, and the air between us hummed. The concert was a blur, some country band I barely heard over the thrum in my chest. We stood close, shoulders brushing, and every touch felt stolen, illicit. Afterward, we walked Raleigh's quiet streets, the night wrapping us in its anonymity. "I've never done anything like this," I admitted, my voice small. He stopped, turning to face me. "Me neither. Not since Diane." His honesty hit me hard, and when he kissed me under a street lamp, it wasn't cautious anymore. It was deep, desperate, a promise of more. I kissed him back, losing myself in it, the world shrinking to just us. We didn't go home right away. He drove to a diner off the highway, and we sat in a booth, sharing fries and quiet laughs. It felt normal, almost innocent, until his foot nudged mine under the table, and that spark flared again. "What are we doing, Jack?" I asked, half smiling, half scared. He leaned forward, eyes serious. "Living, Susan. For once." I wanted to believe it, wanted to hold on to that feeling, free, wanted, alive. But as we drove back, reality crept in.
Tom. Ethan.
The life I'd built. He dropped me off at 1 a.m., the street dark and still. "See you tomorrow?" he asked, hopeful. I nodded, slipping out, but as I crept inside, the house felt foreign. Tom's boots by the door, Ethan's toys scattered, signs of a life I'd betrayed. I sank onto the couch, the high of the night crashing into a hollow ache. My phone buzzed, "Jack." Tonight was perfect. I didn't reply. Instead, I buried my face in my hands, the weight of it all pressing down. Sunday morning, Tom suggested church, and I went, hoping hymns could wash me clean. But sitting there, his hand in mine, I felt like a fraud. Jack waved from across the street after, casual as ever, and I waved back, my stomach twisting. That afternoon, Linda stopped by with coffee, chattering about neighborhood gossip. "Saw you out late Friday," she said, offhand, and my blood ran cold. "Girls' night," I blurted, too quick. She raised an eyebrow but let it go. I couldn't breathe right after she left. Did she know? Had she seen? Monday brought the real blow. Tom came home early, a rare grin on his face. "Got a surprise," he said, pulling me outside. There, on the deck, was a swing he'd built, just like the one we dreamed of when we were young and broke. "For us," he said, proud, and my throat closed up. I hugged him, tears stinging, because I didn't deserve it. That night, Jack texted, "Can't stop thinking about Raleigh." I stared at the screen, Tom snores beside me, and the swing silhouette outside. What had I done? This wasn't just a fling anymore, it was a wrecking ball, and I'd swung it myself. Tom's swing swayed gently in the backyard breeze that night, a silent testament to the man I was breaking. I lay awake beside him, his arm heavy across my waist, while Jack's text glowed on my phone. "Can't stop thinking about Raleigh." I didn't answer, couldn't. The memory of that night, his kiss under the street lamp, The diner's quiet intimacy clashed with the swing's creak outside, a sound that whispered home and betrayal in equal measure. I'd wanted to feel alive, but now I just felt lost. Tuesday morning, I buried myself in routine, packing Ethan's lunch, kissing Tom goodbye, scrubbing dishes until my hands were raw. But Jack was everywhere. His truck rumbled past as I waved Ethan onto the school bus, and later, I saw him on his porch, sipping coffee, watching me. I turned away, but my phone buzzed minutes later. Meet me later? My fingers hovered, torn between delete and reply. I typed no, then erased it. Maybe erased that too. Finally, I sent, busy today. A half-truth that bought me time, but not peace. Work was a blur. I manage a small boutique downtown, and the chatter of customers usually steadies me.
Not today.
Every laugh from the street sounded like Jack's. Every shadow felt like his frame in the doorway. By lunch, I was pacing the stockroom, replaying Linda's words. Saw you out late Friday. She hadn't pushed, but her look lingered in my mind, sharp and knowing. What if she'd seen Jack's truck? What if she told Tom? The thought squeezed my chest until I could barely breathe. That afternoon, Jack showed up at the shop. I was rearranging scarves when the bell chimed, and there he was, holding a takeout bag. Figured you skipped lunch, he said, all easy charm. My coworker, Jenny, grinned and slipped to the back, leaving us alone. You shouldn't be here, I hissed, glancing at the window. He set the bag down unfazed. Just being a friend. But his eyes said more, and when he brushed my arm handing me a coffee, that spark flared. Damn him, damn me. I pulled back, voice low. This has to stop, Jack. He leaned in, close enough to whisper, Can you stop it? I didn't answer, just pushed him out with a shaky, Go. He went, but the damage was done. Jenny reappeared, eyebrow raised. New boyfriend, she teased, and I laughed it off, too loud. Too forced. Just a neighbor, I said, but her smirk stayed with me all day. By the time I got home, I was a wreck, jumping when Tom called from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. He'd made spaghetti, Ethan's favorite, and we sat as a family, Tom twirling pasta on his fork, Ethan giggling over a school story. I smiled, nodded, but my mind was across the street, where Jack's lights flickered on. That night, I dreamed of Raleigh, Jack's hands, the music, the freedom, only to wake in a cold sweat beside Tom. He stirred, mumbling, You okay, Sue? I nodded, throat tight, and slipped out to the living room. The swing loomed outside, a shadow of what I was throwing away. I grabbed my phone, typed to Jack. We can't keep doing this. Sent it before I could chicken out. His reply came fast, I know. But I don't want to lose you. My heart twisted. Lose me? I was never his to lose. Wednesday hit with a jolt. Tom left early for a meeting, and I was dropping Ethan at school when Linda pulled up beside me. Hey, Susan, she said, casual but pointed. Fun girls' night last week, huh? Saw you coming home late. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. Yeah, I stammered, lost track of time. She smiled, tight-lipped. Looked like a good time. That truck's been around a lot lately. My stomach dropped. She knew something. I mumbled an excuse and fled, her words a noose tightening around me. Jack didn't text again that day, and I thought maybe he'd heard me, that we'd finally stop. But Thursday, he was at my door when Tom was at work, Ethan at a playdate. We need to talk, he said, stepping inside before I could protest. His face was serious, no grin this time. I meant what I said, Susan. I'm in deep. Too deep to walk away. I shook my head, backing up. This isn't real, Jack. It's a fantasy. I've got a husband, a son. He cut me off, voice raw. And what about you? What do you want? The question stopped me cold.
Want?
I hadn't asked myself that in years. We stood there, the air thick, until he reached for me. I let him, God help me, I let him, his hands on my shoulders, pulling me close. The kiss was slow, heavy with everything unsaid, and for a moment, I drowned in it. But then Ethan's laugh echoed in my head, Tom's swing flashed behind my eyes, and I shoved him away. No, I gasped, "This ends now." He stared, jaw tight. "You don't mean that." "I do," I snapped, tears welling. "Get out." He left, and I sank to the floor, sobbing into my hands. The high was gone, replaced by a gnawing void. I'd wanted to feel alive, but this wasn't living. It was wreckage. Friday came, and Tom planned a family picnic. Him, me, Ethan, the swing swaying as we ate sandwiches. He was so happy, so steady, and I played along, but every laugh felt borrowed. Jack's truck stayed parked, his lights off, but I felt him watching. Linda drove by, waving, and I wondered how long before she'd say something, how long before it all fell apart. That night, alone in the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were hollow, my hands still trembling from Jack's touch. I'd chased a spark and lit a fuse instead, and now it was burning toward everything I loved. Tom slept down the hall, Ethan in his room, and I was here, a stranger in my own skin. I didn't know how to stop it, didn't know if I could. But I knew one thing. I'd opened a door I couldn't close, and the cost was coming due. The bathroom mirror didn't lie. I looked like a woman crumbling. My reflection stared back, eyes red from crying, hands still shaky from pushing Jack away. Down the hall, Tom slept soundly, and Ethan's soft snores drifted from his room. They were my world, my anchor, and I'd let a storm rip through it. That night, I crawled into bed beside Tom, his warmth a comfort I didn't deserve. Sleep came in fits, haunted by Jack's voice. "What do you want?" I didn't have an answer, not one I could face. Saturday morning broke with a gray drizzle, matching the fog in my head. Tom was up early, whistling as he fixed pancakes, while Ethan begged for extra syrup. I moved through it like a shadow, pouring coffee, forcing smiles. "You're off lately," Tom said, flipping a pancake, his tone gentle. "Work stressing you out?" I nodded, seizing the excuse. "Yeah, just a lot on my plate." He grinned, oblivious. "Take it easy today, okay? We've got that picnic to enjoy." His kindness stabbed deeper than anger ever could. Jack's truck stayed silent across the street, no sign of him. I should have felt relief, but it was a hollow ache instead, like losing something I'd never had a right to. I kept busy, scrubbing counters, folding laundry, anything to drown the noise in my mind. But around noon, the doorbell rang, and my heart lurched. It was Linda, holding a casserole dish, her smile too bright. "Thought you could use a break from cooking," she said, stepping inside. I took the dish, muttering thanks, but her eyes lingered. "Everything okay, Susan? You've been distracted." "Fine," I said too quick. She tilted her head, studying me. "Saw that truck again the other day. Your neighbor sure gets around." Her tone was light, but it landed like a stone. I forced a laugh. "Jack's just friendly, that's all." She nodded, slow and deliberate. "Friendly's one word for it." She didn't push further, just hugged me and left, but the air felt colder after.
Did she know?
Was she waiting to tell Tom? Panic clawed at me, and I sank onto the couch, casserole forgotten. That afternoon, Tom and Ethan dragged me to the picnic, sandwiches, lemonade, the swing swaying as Ethan ran circles around us. Tom looped an arm around me, content, and I leaned into him, desperate to feel normal. But every rustle in the trees made me glance across the street, half expecting Jack to appear. He didn't, but the weight of him, of us, pressed down anyway. When Ethan hugged me, sticky with lemonade, I held him tighter than usual, guilt choking me. "Love you, Mommy," he said, and I nearly broke. Sunday, I tried to reset church with Tom, lunch at his mom's, a family drive. But Jack texted mid-afternoon. "I'm sorry.
Can we talk?"
I stared at it, thumb hovering, then deleted it. No more, I told myself. No more lies, no more stolen moments. But Monday, he was at my door again the second Tom left for work and Ethan caught the bus. "I can't do this," he said, voice rough. "Pretending I don't feel this, it's killing me." I stepped back, arms crossed. "Then stop feeling it, Jack. I have a family." His eyes darkened. "And I've got nothing left to lose." That hit me, his loneliness, his need, and for a split second, I wavered. He saw it, stepped closer. Tell me you don't feel it too, he challenged, voice low. I opened my mouth to lie, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned away, staring at Ethan's drawings on the fridge. I can't do this to them, I whispered. He didn't touch me, just stood there, breathing hard. I'll wait, he said finally. As long as it takes. Then he was gone, leaving me with a silence that screamed. The week blurred. Work, home, faking it for Tom and Ethan. Linda's casserole sat uneaten, a reminder of her watchful eyes. Thursday brought the twist that shook me loose. I was at the boutique, ringing up a customer, when Jenny leaned over, grinning. Your neighbor asked about you yesterday. Stopped by when you were out. Said he misses your coffee chats. My stomach dropped. Jack at my job again, bolder now. He's just a friend. I snapped, sharper than I meant. Jenny smirked. Sure, boss. Whatever you say. That night, Tom came home late, tired but chatty. Ran into Linda at the gas station, he said, kicking off his shoes. She asked if we're okay, said you've seemed off. What's up with that? My blood froze. She's just nosy, I mumbled, stirring soup I didn't taste. He shrugged, trusting as ever. Yeah, she's always been a busybody. But his words didn't ease the knot in my gut. Linda wasn't letting it go, and Jack wasn't backing off. I was trapped, a tightrope fraying under my feet. Friday, I cracked. Tom was at a work dinner, Ethan at a friend's, and I was alone, pacing the kitchen. Jack knocked, soft, insistent, and I let him in, too tired to fight. I'm losing my mind, he said, hands in his hair. I see you every day, and it's not enough. I sank into a chair, exhausted. It has to be enough, Jack. This isn't a game, I'm married. He knelt beside me, eyes pleading. Then why does it feel like more? I didn't answer, just looked away, but he stayed, his presence a weight I couldn't shake. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that line again, but we talked, hours of raw, jagged words. About Diane, about Tom, about the mess we'd made. When he left at midnight, I felt emptier than ever. Saturday, Tom planned a movie night, popcorn, Ethan nestled between us, and I played along, but my laughs were hollow. Jack's lights glowed across the street, a beacon I couldn't ignore. Sunday, Linda waved from her yard, her smile sharp, and I knew time was running out. I'd built a house of cards, and the wind was picking up. Linda's wave from her yard that Sunday stuck with me like a splinter, small but impossible to ignore. I waved back, my smile brittle, and hurried inside where Tom was sprawled on the couch, flipping channels. Ethan darted past, begging for a snack, and I obliged on autopilot, the kitchen a blur of routine. But my mind was a tangle, Jack's words from Friday night. Why does it feel like more? Clashing with Linda's knowing looks and Tom's steady presence. I'd wanted a spark, a taste of something new, and now it was a fire I couldn't put out. Monday morning, I sent Ethan off to school and kissed Tom goodbye, his love you, Sue, a dagger in my chest. I stood on the porch, watching his truck disappear, when Jack emerged from his garage. He didn't approach, just nodded, a quiet, loaded gesture, and I turned away, heart pounding. I couldn't keep this up, couldn't keep lying to myself for them. Work was a lifeline, customers, receipts, Jenny's chatter. But even there, Jack's shadow loomed. Your friend hasn't been by lately, Jenny said, smirking over a stack of sweaters. Trouble in paradise? I glared, sharp enough to shut her up, but her words festered. That afternoon, the dam broke. I was restocking shelves when my phone buzzed. Tom. Home early. Meet me at the park with Ethan? Simple, sweet, so him. I texted back sure, relief mixing with dread. Maybe this was my chance to reset, to cling to what mattered. But as I locked up, Linda pulled into the lot, her car idling beside mine. Hey, Susan, she called, window down. We need to talk. My stomach sank. She wasn't smiling now.
About what?
I asked, voice tight. She leaned out, eyes hard. I saw you with him. Friday night in your kitchen. Late. The world tilted. You're wrong, I stammered, but she shook her head. Don't lie to me. I've known you too long. What's going on with Jack? Her tone wasn't cruel, just firm, and it broke me. It's nothing, I whispered, tears stinging. It's over. She studied me, then softened. I hope so. For Tom's sake. For Ethan's. I haven't said anything yet. But I will if I have to. She drove off, leaving me trembling in the parking lot, her threat a guillotine over my neck. I picked up Ethan, drove to the park, and found Tom waiting with a picnic basket. Another surprise, another swing, this one swaying by the lake. Ethan ran to him, laughing, and Tom pulled me into a hug. Missed you today, he said, warm and solid, and I clung to him, fighting sobs. We ate, played catch, watched the sunset, and for a moment, I pretended I hadn't shattered us. But Linda's words echoed, and Jack's lights burned in my mind when we got home. I couldn't outrun it anymore. Tuesday, I called in sick, sent Ethan to school, and waited for Tom to leave. Then I marched across the street, banging on Jack's door. He opened it, startled, hope flickering in his eyes. It's done, I said, voice shaking. No more talks, no more looks. I'm choosing my family. He stepped closer, desperate. Susan, No. I cut him off, tears streaming. You don't get it. I've ruined enough. Stay away from me. His face fell, but he nodded, silent, and I walked away, the slam of his door a gunshot in my chest. That night, Tom came home with flowers, daisies, my favorite, and I broke. I sobbed into his shoulder, babbling about stress, work, anything but the truth. He held me, patient, whispering, "We'll get through it," and I hated myself more. Wednesday, Linda stopped by, saw the flowers, and gave me a look, half relief, half warning. Good choice, she murmured, and left. Jack's truck didn't move, his curtains stayed closed, and I prayed he'd keep his word. Days bled into weeks. I threw myself into Tom and Ethan, cooking dinners, park trips, movie nights, building a wall around what I'd done. Jack faded to a ghost across the street, no waves, no texts. Linda kept quiet, her silence a fragile gift. But the guilt didn't fade. Every time Tom smiled, every time Ethan hugged me, it was a knife twisting deeper. I'd chased a thrill and traded my peace for it, and now I lived with the wreckage. One night, months later, I sat on Tom's swing, the backyard quiet under a Carolina moon. He was inside, reading to Ethan, their laughter drifting out. I rocked, staring at Jack's dark house. He put it up for sale last week, a for sale sign staking my victory and my loss. Tears fell, hot and bitter, as I gripped the swing's chains. I'd won them back, Tom, Ethan, our life. But at what cost? I'd tasted something forbidden, let it burn me, and now I was ashes inside. I regretted it. All of it. The kiss, the nights, the lies. Not because I'd almost lost them, but because I'd lost me. Tom called from the door. "Coming in, Sue?" And I wiped my face, forcing a smile. "Yeah," I said, standing. I walked inside, the swing still swaying behind me, a rhythm of what was and what I'd never fix. I'd chosen right in the end, but too late to feel whole. And that's a weight I'll carry forever.